Hi, I'm Nitika Chopra. I'm the founder and CEO of Chronicon, and I'm here speaking on Breaking the Biz podcast. Breaking the Biz. Breaking the Biz.
Breaking the Biz. Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz. We have got a great guest with us. We have Nitika Chopra, who is the founder and CEO of Chronicon, also the Point of Pain podcast host and creator. After living with severely debilitating psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis for over 30 years, Nitika Chopra found that no matter how hard she tried, she always felt completely isolated and alone. For a long time, she assumed that it must have been something was inherently broken or wrong with her. After getting the courage to open up about her health, she realized that every time she met someone who had a chronic illness, they felt the exact same way. With Nitika's career starting over 10 years ago as the founder of a popular online magazine, the host of her own talk show on global television, and being a brand ambassador for some of the most prestigious beauty brands on the market, in the midst of her success, she felt a deep longing for something more. Something she could create that would truly have an impact on the lives of others. That passion sparked the idea to create Chronicon. After 10 years in content creation, Nitika launched Chronicon in the fall of 2019, an inclusive community building event focused on those living with chronic illnesses. The New York City event sold out, had 2,000 plus live stream viewers, and high-level brand sponsors. Now, she's excited to announce that Chronicon is expanding online with the Chronicon community and new accessible online space with inspiration, advocacy, and empowerment for chronically ill folks across the globe to connect. She's also the host, as I mentioned, of the Point of Pain podcast, which is available wherever you stream your podcast. So on that note, we are honored to have you tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I want to talk about the early years before we get into the chronic issue and what you're doing now. When you were a young girl, what was the dream job? When I grow up, I want to be.
I actually wanted to be a singer when I was a kid. I took voice lessons for about 15 years of my life and always loved performing, and music and singing was like a huge part of my passion. So that was what I really wanted to do.
Okay. So high school, did you pursue that in high school as well?
Yeah, I was in voice lessons that whole time, and I was in a cappella choir and, did all the school plays and all that kind of stuff. So I continued after college and stuff too, but not for too long.
Okay. And after high school, talk me through your education? Did you go to college? What was the plan and how did you get there?
Yeah, I ended up going to college. I just, got my bachelor's degree in humanities, and I kind of wanted to finish school. I was never really good at school. And I always found it kind of challenging for me. I'm not, I guess, a very linear learner, so I felt like I had to kind of follow the ways other people wanted me to learn, which is just as I've gotten older and now I'm an entrepreneur and I can learn on my own. I noticed that I actually am very smart, but I'm not the same as, maybe the person sitting next to me in my class was. And I didn't learn that until much, much later in life. So yeah, I got through school, finished college, and went on from there.
So talk me through working with some of the largest brands. Obviously, we're going to get into the entrepreneurship, but after college, did you take on any internships? What's the first job out of college?
Well, my earlier years of life were a little bit untraditional. I mean, in a lot of ways. I got my first chronic illness when I was 10, and when I was 19, I got my second chronic illness. And it shaped much of, those early years, but also the first half of my 20s. So while I was in college, I ended up taking a lot longer to finish school because I couldn't get to class because I had such a debilitating condition. And it was like a very unconventional experience and something that I didn't know anyone else who had been through something like that. And so when I finally started working, I honestly didn't know if I was going to be able to hold a job for a really long time because I couldn't stand. And I was in a lot of pain. My doctor had told me that if I didn't get on medication in time, I would be completely immobile by the time I was 30. So it was something that, I look at so many people now and they're getting internships and they have like a track that they're following. And there was definitely a lot of like fear and worry around me all the time with my family and people who care about me, just feeling like I'm not on track. I'm not like, this is not the track that anyone ever thought that I would be on. And of course, myself included. I think when I first started to feel better and I started to take a turn and things started to get better with my health, I started with like retail jobs. And I was just like trying to get small jobs to be able to like have something that I could do, but that also wasn't going to be as taxing as maybe something more serious. And then a few years after that, I ended up going into real estate. And so I did that for a little while. I live in Brooklyn, but I was living in Manhattan at the time, and I've been here for 23 years. And so, yeah, I felt like that was kind of cool because I was auditioning and I was acting a little bit too on the side. And so I thought I could kind of, work, but then also do auditions when I needed to. And I was trying to figure out how to make that all happen. But it was definitely like not a traditional path.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, let's talk about the fact, when did you know, obviously having chronic pain, having a hard time standing, you mentioned at 10 and then at 19. Did you have to go to the doctor and go, what is going on with my body? I know something's not right.
Yeah, I mean, when I got diagnosed, my first diagnosis with psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disease and it's a skin condition, and I was really young, so I didn't even, you're not really thinking about like diseases or different conditions. And so I just started off with like a small patch on my left arm, and it was like the size of a dime, and it itched, and I showed it to my mom, and she was like, oh, let's go take you to the doctor and see, what it is. And I just remember the doctor saying it was psoriasis, and like my whole family getting really upset because they knew that it was maybe going to be a little bit more challenging than they had thought. Maybe it was just like a little spot and it would, you put cream on it and go away. They realized that was not going to be the case. But within a year, it covered from the tip of my foot to the tip of my head. Like I had no clear skin on my body from that one patch. And then when I was 19, I ended up getting psoriatic arthritis. And that was discovered because I was in my dorm room at college and I was trying to open the inside bag of a box of cereal, and those are hard to open even when you don't have arthritis, but I was trying to open the bag of cereal and I noticed like my hand wasn't like bending and I couldn't grasp the bag and it was painful. And then I started that journey and said, like, what is going on? What is this? And my parents were living in Hong Kong at the time and I was going to school in Connecticut. So it was like a whole thing I had to kind of do on my own a little bit at that time. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just kind of was happening, you know, at the time. And I was sort of like, this is not normal. This is not what I thought I was going to be feeling at the age of 19 years old. But yeah, and then I got help and I got some support around it.
Okay, awesome. I love it. And then obviously it springboards and is the catalyst for a lot of things that you're doing later in life, which we're going to get there. So talk me through, you start doing the baby steps as far as jobs, so to speak. You mentioned not having anything too taxing on the body, working retail, also auditioning at night. And when indeed you found time, when do you start working with some of the larger brands?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started working with larger brands. I'm trying to think the kind of timeline. I guess when I started my first company, which you mentioned when you introduced me, Bella Life, I started that when I was 28. And I started working with larger brands like within the first couple of years of that company, because I would do a lot of partnerships where I would have events and we would co-host events together. This was before Instagram. I know I'm aging myself, but it's just the way it is. It was before Instagram. And, you know, I had an online magazine, which was like, you know, the thing, I guess, that people did. Like, I didn't have a lot of other social media. You don't have any other social media. I think I maybe barely had a Facebook kind of thing. And yeah, and so I would work with brands. I'd just meet people. I'd network. I'm here in New York. I just kind of go any chance I got. When I got energy, finally, I was like, let me use it all on figuring out how to make my dreams come true. And that's kind of been how I have been for a very long time. And yeah, so I started around that time.
Okay, so you would hold events and you would meet people. Talk me through networking, because obviously people always think, oh, networking, I got to go to the party. I have to exchange the business cards, and networking can look completely different for different people. And when indeed I believe you're passionate about something, it makes that networking a little easier. So talk me through how success came your way through your networking.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in just like relationship building is everything. So I don't personally ever even think about it as like really networking. That's technically what it is. But to me, I'm always thinking about a relationship is reciprocal, right? It's not one-sided, hopefully, if you're in a healthy relationship, whether that's with a family member, a friend, a partner, whatever. And so I always approach anything like that from that place. Like if I'm meeting you and I know maybe that you have an opportunity or you're at a company that maybe could give me an opportunity, you don't owe me that opportunity. There is not one thing that I have done that is going to tell you, oh my gosh, I have to give Nitika this amazing job. That has to be earned. Right. And I try to be a very genuine person. So I'm like, okay, I see that there's this opportunity. There's this person who is in a position of power, influence, and this could actually really genuinely help me, you know, but what can I do for them that's going to genuinely help them and support them and serve them? And if I am right for the thing that I want, I've always believed it will naturally come if I put myself in a position of being of service, showing up as, you know, a generous person. I really feel like that stuff comes back to you. So I think that's a huge part of it. And then I also think, you know, especially when you have a chronic illness or a disability, I have found that my energy is not infinite. Like I have only a specific, you know, certain amount of energy. And so I go into all of those different networking events or potential networking events, and I always try to have an intention. I always try to think, one, what's the intention of my company? Like, why do I think you should know about what I'm even talking about? What is it that I really want to share? And I do spend a lot of time, you know, even before talking to all of you, right? Like if I'm going to share about Chronicon, why do I want to talk to you about it? Why do I think it's so important for us to be having this conversation? You could be listening to and sitting in a room with a million other people, right? So like, what is it that I really want to bring to the conversations that I'm having? And what is the intention that I want to get out of that conversation? And sometimes it's just like, I just want to have fun, and like wonderful things come out of that, being in joy and being in fun. And other times it's like, oh no, I'm working on this event and I need like 3 more sponsors. So I better go in there and see if I can get like at least 1 business card tonight or something like that. Right. So I think setting intentions and then also setting the foundation of just understanding like who you want to be in your business relationships, I think makes a big difference.
I love how you mentioned too, not going in there. I mean, maybe in the case when you needed like the 1 or 2 sponsors left for the event, but what can you bring to the table and what can you offer? And having those positive intentions and that positive energy, I truly believe that positive energy attracts positive energy. So going in there, not trying to take from others, but to give, I feel like that's how that karma comes back to you, tenfold. So I love how you mentioned that. So you start working with brands. Talk me through your entrepreneurial mind. How did you build that?
It's a great question. I'm like, what is my entrepreneurial mind like? I don't even sometimes totally know. I think I'm a very spiritual person. So everything I do is always connected to something greater than me. And sometimes that is the population that I want to serve. There are, almost half the population of the United States has a chronic illness. It's a large amount of people. I'm just one person, right? So sometimes it doesn't have to be a spiritual thing that you're thinking of, but it's like the greater mission and message and that community of people that you want to serve. So I'm always thinking about that. I think that is where everything I do comes from. And I also am someone who's really passionate about alignment and integrity. And I think people will define those 2 things in different ways. But being a sensitive person, I find that I can just tell when I'm doing something or I'm going in a direction and it's just not aligned. And it's can be annoying, to be honest with you, because sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be so easy if this thing would just like be the thing and I would just be happy doing this one thing. And, this is kind of working. So like, maybe I shouldn't ruffle any feathers and I should just keep going down this path. But I think what makes me the kind of entrepreneur that I am is, 1, this purpose of something much greater than me. And then the second is grounding myself in what is true in this moment. And am I in alignment? Am I working towards something that is true for me and that is actually for my highest good? Or am I just kind of going through the motions, which I've never done, but like, am I just kind of going through the motions and trying to just check something off of my list and stuff? So I think those 2 things really make up a large part of my entrepreneurial mind.
So let's talk about, obviously, chronic illness. You've been living with it for your entire life. And you mentioned meeting others and obviously having that connection. And I find that people are really successful when they do work that they live, they're passionate about, and that they live. They don't have to fake it. It's what is around them. So obviously you understand chronic illness. When you were meeting others who obviously, I feel like as soon as you have that connection, you're like, there's someone else who's kind of had to be resilient and get through life the same way I have. Talk me through how you created the foundation of Chronicon and the early steps. And there are the early stages.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the early stages wasn't Chronicon. I started with Bella Life, which was my online magazine. Excuse me. And I started with practicing through that. I didn't know I was practicing through that, right? To me, I was just creating this company that I wanted to be successful. And I really wanted a talk show. And so that was why I built the company in the first place. But once I got to Chronicon and I had the idea for Chronicon many years later, almost a decade later, I was able to see, oh, everything I did with Bella Life prepared me for Chronicon. Every single thing. Like all the content I created, I had, I had different contributors. I had over 100 contributors writing for me by the end of Bella Life. So like even that mimics a lot of what I do with speakers for Chronicon. I had been doing workshops and events as a part of the work that I did for Bella Life since the very beginning. And I had ended up doing these events called self-love celebrations, which I had over 250 people come. And, I organized all the vendors and the brands, and I did it very scrappy, and did it on my own. Right. So to move from that to then doing a conference was an adjustment. It was definitely a growth edge, but it wasn't like a whole new thing. It was like I'd already done this. I just hadn't done it for the people that I wanted to do it for. That was really the biggest shift. So I would say that was the beginning stages of doing the work that I'm doing. And I started my first event for Bella Life. I did a vision board party with my girlfriends. And I think there was maybe 8 girls, and we went to my friend's living room and we all brought vision board like accessories or supplies. And we had like olives and cheese and crackers and some like sparkling water. It was like a very simple event. Nobody paid. It was just like, we're just coming over. And I was like hosting the event. And I did that because I wanted to be a talk show host. So I was intentionally aiming to mimic hosting in as many ways that I could in my life. It was very intentional that I decided to do events because I was like, how am I going to host? Now I'm a podcast host, but I didn't know about, I don't think podcasts even existed. It's just so sad. Maybe they did, but it's just called the radio, But I thought, how else can I mimic being a host? And the first thing I thought of was, I guess I could host events. And so I just started doing that. But I started very, very small and then grew from there. And then the idea for Chronicon came in the fall of 2018. I was walking around an event called Curvycon, actually, which was a conference for folks who are curvy. And it was a beautiful conference. I don't think it's around anymore. But I was walking around and noticing how celebrated everyone was in the room for being exactly the size, the shape, the body type that they were. It's like, none of the brands in the room were saying you should come over here, but we need you to change. They were like, come over here and please wear our clothes because you're just so perfect the way that you are. And something in my spirit just totally like saw that in a new way, like I'd never seen something before. And it gave me the idea for Chronicon. And I was like, if someone had done that for me and my psoriasis, covered with psoriasis, and said, come over here with all that psoriasis, you're perfect just the way you are, it would have changed my whole life. It really would have changed my whole life. So that was the impetus specifically for Chronicon.
So before we get to Chronicon, let's talk about talk show hosts. So you put those intentions out there, you do the vision boards, and obviously you manifest it. What were you doing, and how did you did at some point in your career, you were a talk show host?
Yes. I had 2 seasons of a talk show called Naturally Beautiful, which aired on Asia TV on a channel called Z Living. It aired all over the world. I built Bella Life with the intention that the contributors would be like what my guests would be like on my show. The content would be like what segments could be like on my show. The video that I did on YouTube would be how I would be on camera, right? Every single part of my website, I knew, even if no one else knew, was like, this is going to be a show one day. And I also had no experience and no connections and no idea how that was ever going to happen. I wasn't saying this because I had like a red carpet that was rolling out, that was going to make this all happen. I had zero clue. And in fact, when I had the idea to have a talk show, I was having a conversation, spiritual conversation, and I was almost like annoyed because I was like, how am I supposed to do this huge thing that I just got this like vision for? I felt the same way when I thought of Chronicon. I was like, how in the world do you want me to do this huge thing? So, yes, I ended up building that. And then 3 years after starting Bella Life, I got an email from the vice president of Asia TV. And they said, we're casting for the host for the show called Naturally Beautiful. And your website looks exactly like the show that we're trying to build. Oof, I just got to chill. And I was like, you don't say, because that's exactly why I built it. And then they brought me in for an audition. And mind you, I was going through a terrible psoriasis flare. So I had psoriasis all over me, all over my arms and legs. And I just, pulled my sleeves down at the time. And I was like, yep, I'm here to audition for the show. It's going to be great. We're going to do it. It's going to be fine. And they ended up hiring me. So
I really do love how you have that problem solving, that critical thinking skill that you need. And I love how everything builds on everything for you. You know, what you're doing even with the podcast, was before its time with the talk show, the beauty brands and just being who you are, finding that community. I feel like people with disabilities, you mentioned it earlier, is the largest minority out there, but everyone thinks of every other minority when you hear the word minority. And we're stronger, obviously, in numbers when we are all together. And there is nothing better than being in a room where you're just accepted for being who you are and not having to mask if, you're on that autism spectrum, or not having to do plastic surgery to try to look like a Kardashian, where you could just naturally be beautiful the way you are. So you connected all the dots and you put out the intention. And I just love, if you look at the beginning of your career to where you are now, everything was building. We talk about you should go up those steps, and you don't want to skip steps, but you kind of laid out the steps and then were able to walk up the steps. So I just want to give you kudos to what you manifested, for sure. And there's nothing better than like creating something and somebody taking notice of it and going like, you are perfect for what we need. With psoriasis, is it similar to shingles where it comes about when you're stressed? Talk us through psoriasis for those who really don't understand it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it does come about when you're stressed a little bit more, but it's not similar to shingles in the sense that shingles is a virus, and psoriasis, and it's also like a curable virus. Like you can take a medication and then it can go away for shingles. But psoriasis is an autoimmune disease. It's not considered curable. And it's sort of, there's a few different types of psoriasis, but primarily it shows up as red, scaly patches of skin, and they itch like chicken pox. And then when you scratch them, they shed like dandruff. So it hits you on every point that it could hit you. And yeah, for about 17 years of my life, like when your lips crack and bleed because they're so chapped, my entire body was like that. And it was excruciating just to even get up to do a simple thing like go to the restroom or, put clothes on and things like that. And so, yeah, it affects millions of people. It affects millions of people. It's actually not very rare. So, yeah, that's a little bit about
I
psoriasis.
heard something interesting about having a meat diet with psoriasis. Is that something that is legit, where it does help eating a lot of meat?
I can't personally really speak to that. I'm not sure. I know that I have found a mix of I'm South Asian, Eastern and Western philosophies, I think have really helped me, taking medicine when I need to take medicine, and then also combining that with just being mindful about what I eat, having protein, working out regularly, all of those things, trying to keep my stress level down, stuff like that, I think just makes a huge difference. But yeah, I also have to take medicine.
Okay. Let's talk about Chronicon.
Okay.
So you get inspired. You kind of, you're like, I want to have a community where everyone can connect. And when I mentioned earlier, you just kind of figure out a way to solve the problems and make it happen. Do you surround yourself with like a team of individuals? Obviously, you're the one with the vision and the leadership, but how do you put together a conference and do it all on your own?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I think I didn't know what I was getting myself into, to be totally honest, because I had done these other events and they were pretty big, right? So I kind of thought, okay, this is just like a little bit more than that. It shouldn't be like too crazy big or, intense. But I was wrong about that. And I ended up, pitching the conference to a handful of brands that I'd already had relationships with for a number of years. And one of the brands was a media company, and they ended up signing on to do the marquee, high level sponsorship. And even that, I barely charged them anything because I didn't know how much money I was going to need. Like the amount that I charged them was a huge deal for me. And it was like 1/12 of what I actually needed, but I didn't know. So, this is all part of the learning, right? But what ended up happening was a huge blessing because they loved the idea for the conference so much that they decided to sort of take it under their wing for that first year. And they sort of put a ton of cash into the conference that, wasn't an investment. It was a sponsorship, essentially. But it was way more than I had even asked for, maybe 6, 7 times more than I had even asked for. But they really wanted the conference to do well. They also asked to buy the rights to the conference like 6 months before it even happened. I said no, all of these things. But yeah, that was sort of how the first conference happened. It like really happened because I think people could tell that I had this idea and this like extraordinary passion around the idea, but I also had, I needed a lot of support, so I think I needed more support than I even knew that I needed. And people maybe could sense that. And they stepped in, which I feel very, very proud of that because it's because of the relationships I built that they wanted to do that.
And I think that always comes back to networking and being a real person, and where people can see your vision and want to support it. Obviously, if they're trying to buy the naming rights or the event, they see the potential. So when you did this, it had to be online because we were dealing with COVID during the time, correct?
Well, no, the first one was in 2019. So it was October 28th, 2019. So I was, by the time the pandemic came around, I was a week away from putting down a deposit for the 2021. And then the pandemic hit. And of course, everything changed. But no, this was pre-pandemic. And yeah, I did it at the end of the year of 2019.
So you got through COVID. Is it now an in-person event?
So we did a large conference again in 2023. So that was sort of our coming back from the pandemic. We also have to be extraordinarily careful because of the population that we're supporting too, right? We want people to feel safe. You want anyone to feel safe, but this population in particular really is a very high needs population, and we have to be very, very conscious of that. So I waited till 2023 to come back. It was wonderful. We sold out again, for the conference. But between May of 2023, which is when we had it last year, to this fall, I would say I have been through my own personal journey and growth experience where I decided to, instead of doing another conference, I decided to actually take us on tour. And it was a wonderful thing. Like, I'm so happy that I did that, but I did it because I am working on learning how to give the amount that I want to give while not self-sacrificing. And I think that is a huge thing. Like, even when I was talking about, networking and being of service and all of that, it's very important to me, and it drives me, like it fuels me to be that kind of person. But I have also had to recalibrate over the last couple of years and say, how can I do that and make sure that impact is still at the center of every single thing that I do? but not have it be at the detriment of my own life, and I think I was reaching a point where that was happening, actually. So I'm in this kind of crossroads of figuring out, like, okay, what does this look like? And the tour, we went to LA and San Francisco. We did a finale in New York. And we're going to work on doing 2 tours in 2025. That's my hope. So, I think it's a wonderful shift and opportunity, but it's a little bit different.
Talk me through putting together tours, LA, San Francisco, obviously New York, you have your connections and whatnot there. But how do you put together, like, when did you say, hey, let's just go ahead and travel to these big cities and make this happen?
I mean, I do not feel like I'm completely qualified to be giving advice on tours because I feel like I'm figuring it out so much as I go along. But I chose cities that were relatively safe for me. Like, I knew we also polled our audience, and we knew where we had the most amount of members because we do have an app for Chronicon. So we knew we had a certain amount of members at those particular places. So I kind of started there. It was just the most, kind of made the most sense to me. And then from there, I had to work backwards and say, like, where are we going to have the events? What's the snack situation going to be like? Are people going to be masked? How do I get people there? All those different things. But that part wasn't super hard for me because I've been doing events for the last 15 years, right? So it wasn't out of my comfort zone to do an event. That was just like, once I found the venue, I was like, okay, this is a plug and play situation that I've already done 1,000 times. I think the part that was challenging was this is part of my growth edge. I didn't ask probably for enough help. And I really thought I could do it all by myself. And so this is, what I'm learning. When I got back from the tour, I was like, oh, if I had asked even just for a little bit more help, like maybe 10% more at each city, I think I would have had a very different experience, like a much more sort of relaxed experience. But I was like, no, I got it. I can do this. I'm a New Yorker. We got it. Like, I'm good, And in retrospect, that's something I would do differently.
I love how you have no problem with the learning curves and making the mistakes and learning from it. There's so many people who don't even attempt because they're afraid of making mistakes. Mm-hmm. And obviously you have that strong growth mindset to get out there and just do it. So again, kudos to you. So you don't have a team at this point. This is really just you. And I love how you mentioned working backwards, like you have the vision. You know where you want to hold it. Now you have to figure out how do you make it happen by working backwards, which I think is a fantastic problem-solving technique that most people don't have. They just don't even know how to get there, let alone work backwards to get to where they want to go. So do you employ people at this point? Or is this all like, hey, I'm just going to keep writing it and doing it myself?
Yeah, I had a team for the 2023 conference. And then for about 2 years, like the year before, the year after, I had a team, a small team. It was like 3 people. But I sort of started and scrapped a lot of that this year. I felt the need to get back down to the basics of saying, like, what is it that I really want to do here? Again, it's like starting with that intention, right? And I felt like I was wanting to do another conference in 2024 because I felt like I was expected to, not because anyone was telling me anything, right? But it's like those voices in your head that you're sort of like, well, that's what we do. So we're going to get up and do it again. Right. And I was actually in the middle, speaking of like growth mindset and being okay with making mistakes. I was in the middle of pitching the conference, of like telling people about it. I hadn't done a ton yet, but I was starting. And everything in my body was just like, this is not going to happen this year. So you need to figure out what is going to happen. And listen, I'm a fighter. I believe in myself. I believe in the mission. Like, if I needed it to happen, I could have made it happen. But my body was not on board at all. And so I just think it's like so important to kind of stop and allow yourself to know that it's not so much a mistake all the time. Sometimes you're just being redirected to something much better.
I love how you mentioned that. Obviously you have those inner voices saying like, this is what's expected. You've done it up to this point. There has to be one. But I think there's also that thin line on when you have to just say no, and you don't say yes to everything. There comes a time where you do have to say no, especially saying no when indeed it is going to impact your health, and that. So, the self-awareness, again, I think comes hand in hand with those critical skills, with that entrepreneurial mindset. And if you're hearing everything saying break, 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 no, 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 you just need to trust your instinct on that. So obviously it was the right call. So you're going to do, I'm going to guess, probably something in 2025. You don't have to. I'm just saying maybe you do. Let's talk about starting a podcast. You go from one thing to the next thing. You obviously have that talk show down, being the host. Talk us through the creation of a podcast.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've had 2 podcasts, and I actually have stopped recording both of them. So they're online and you can find them. But I am focusing more on my Substack now, which is something that I just felt called to do. But I started with the Point of Pain podcast. I think that was in 2019 that I started that. Like before I started Chronicon, I started the Point of Pain. And I loved doing it. I got a lot out of it. And I also then started a podcast, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, called Thriving Together. And I loved that too. It was great. And as I said, all the episodes are out for people to listen to. But I think, before I get to why I ended them, why I started them was also about wanting to embody hosting, right? So I was like, oh, if I want to have another show one day, I'd love to have another show. So I'm like, okay, what are the other ways that I can embody hosting? And podcasting was getting to be really popular. I also really love people. I genuinely love learning from people. I love hearing people's stories. I get a lot out of that. And so I thought being able to connect with people, I know some wonderful, talented people, and I was like, being able to share those people with others feels like a really special thing. So to start it, I kind of had to sit down and see what are all the pieces. What are the things that I'm not really excited about in terms of starting it? And what are the things that I am? And for me, like the tech stuff was just not in my wheelhouse at all. Like getting, I don't know, like the feed, you have to put it on and making sure it streams on everything and just like all the tech, making sure I have the right mic and this and that and the right platform. I just felt like I just want to be the talent. Like I didn't want to be the tech person and the talent for this particular project. So I actually ended up hiring somebody who set up the whole podcast for me both times. And it was really great, really helpful. And then I was able to produce all the content, which I had already been doing in another version with doing all of my speakers for Chronicon or doing all of my content on my blog or things like that.
Let's talk about mentorship. You mentioned you have no problem kind of going out there, experiencing it and making the mistakes and learning from it and then fixing them. At some point, do you have a mentor or does a mentor come to mind who you can reach out to and, throw off ideas and brainstorm and kind of put you in the right direction?
Yeah, I would say I don't have a mentor. I feel like I have a community of mentors because, I'm trying to do something that none of my friends have ever tried to do exactly the same way that I've done it, right? So I need different perspectives for different things. I don't think there's like a one size fits all for mentorship personally. It's also just the way my creative brain works, right? Even with like doing things like the podcasts and stuff, it's like after a while, I need something different. I need something fresh. I need to like learn in a different way. So I really trust that about myself. And I have a community of mentors, people who have done some exceptional things or people who just even like if they haven't done the thing that I want to do, I can tell that they really see my ability to do the thing that I want to do, and they really celebrate that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to that person when I'm having like a down moment or I'm doubting myself, and they'll remind me why I'm the perfect person to do the thing that I want to do, you know? So things like that.
I think I love how you answer that. Just having a group of people, and obviously, when we look for mentors, we look for people who have kind of done the work that we're trying to step into. But I loved how you mentioned no one was doing it the way you wanted to do it, and no one had done it yet. So creating that community and doing it on your own, I love it. How do you balance your drive, being an entrepreneur, wanting to do all these things, and then also balancing your personal life? So work and personal life.
Yeah, that took some time. I mean, I would say when I first started Bella Life, I didn't have a lot of balance. I was working full time in real estate, and then I was working on Bella Life like any waking second that I could possibly get. So everything was really about work for a long time. And the same thing when I started Chronicon, I wasn't working full time anywhere. I was working full time on Chronicon, but I just love it so much that I just like wanted to work on it all the time. It's only been, I would say, in the last 2 or 3 years that I've been much better about knowing that I need more breaks. I need more fun. I mean, I love what I do, so I think it's fun, but it's a different kind of fun. Right? It's like a work-focused fun versus, you know, going to see a movie or just like doing something for entertainment purposes, right? So I've had to, because I am very driven and I am very passionate about what I'm doing, and it's like I could just not sleep and just do this all the time and be happy. I've had to really regulate that on my own. I've had to sort of say, like, it's my responsibility to make sure that I have a more balanced experience, more balanced life. Even when I started the community, our app, the Chronicon community, I just wanted to be in there all the time. And just like I was doing multiple events a week on my own. Like I was doing so much for the community when I first started. And it's just like not sustainable. It's not because I don't want to do it, but it's not sustainable. So I've had to really work on that. And now I feel like I take a lot more weekends where I don't even like look at my computer, and I just like totally unplug. And it's really nice because then I come back on Monday and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I get to do this thing and I get to work on this. And it's been really good, but it's taken practice.
And I love how you even mentioned working on the online magazine was your fun. It was your escape from real estate. And I feel like there's people who are in the arts and they can, let's say it's animation or sound design or producing music, and they're doing it for other people. But then when they get home, they still have that creative outlet and they do something creative to relax. And I just love how yours was working on the magazine and doing that because it did bring you joy and fulfillment. And it's nice that it wasn't that burdensome. You know, obviously, like you mentioned, 2024, the Chronicon going like, I know I'm expected to do this. The voice is in the head. But if you can't be creative and it's not fulfilling and it's not relaxing, then you just need to know when not to do it. So I love that. My last question to you is, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self with all that you have learned thus far in your life?
Such a big question. What's the biggest piece of advice? I think when I was younger, I had a sense of urgency that bordered desperation. You know, I was worried that I wasn't going to figure it out, you know, and I still worry sometimes, right? I haven't figured it all out, right? I still have so much more that I want to create and achieve. And I think that's probably been like one of my biggest lessons of just learning, like even incorporating more fun and saying it's okay if you take a weekend off, like you're not going to miss anything. I think I heard that a lot when I was younger, but I didn't really like absorb it. I didn't really embody it. And so I would go to everything, but also I would go to things and just feel the sense of urgency that I think it was exhausting. Like I didn't need to be so urgent. And now I'm so much happier just feeling like, yes, I have these goals. I have these things I really want to achieve. They're important to me. I can worry sometimes, I can have doubts sometimes. It's not like it's not there because I don't want to paint that picture either. But it's way shorter. Like it'll come up and then I'll see it and then I'll sit with it and then I'll be like, oh, but you're good. Like there's no rush on this. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing is just like letting go of that sense of urgency. Like it's actually getting me further away from the things that I want versus getting me closer, which you think that it's getting you closer and it's really not.
I love that sense of urgency that, we have to, everyone has their like timelines. I need to be married by a certain time. I need to have a kid by a certain time. I need to have this career by that time. I need to have a house by this time. And if you let go of that urgency and just let it come, the happiness will come your way, and it's definitely more healthy. I lied. I have one more question. Okay. What's next for you? You have the podcast, you have Chronicon, you're very ambitious, you have other goals. What's next for you?
Next for me is we are planning on taking Chronicon on tour in the spring and the fall of 2025. So I'm working on pitching to brands right now and working with different brands to see what we can create and what's possible. And so that's what's next for me.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. At this time, if there are any questions, let me see some hands and I will call on you. I see in hands. Presley, go for it.
It's not a comment, but it's not a question, but it's a comment. But my friend, her name is Jessica. She has chronic illness too, and she's been fighting for it for a few years now. And just watching her, fighting for it is really amazing, And I was just wondering, what is the best piece of advice for someone who has chronic illness?
That's a big question too. Honestly, I don't believe in unsolicited advice for people that have chronic illness. I think if they want support, I think the best thing to know is that you are worthy of asking for support and you're worthy of asking for help. It can be so easy to isolate. And I definitely did that a lot growing up. So yeah, just letting the person know that you're worthy of getting support and not having to go through this alone. And for anyone supporting someone through a chronic illness, I would say the best piece of advice would be to just tell them that you're there for them and ask them what they need when they share that they're going through a hard time.
That's perfect.
Beautiful. Again, coming back to that empathy that we talk about. You're not born with it. You got to, work on it. And when indeed you're an active listener, an effective listener, and you're empathetic, it does hold a lot of weight. Noah, I see your hand up. Go for it and ask your question.
When you are working with your disability, how are you able to adjust with your podcast? How are you able to work just by having your skin peeling off badly?
Yeah, it's really, it's a constant experience of self-love and empathy for myself to start. And I have to be wildly transparent in order to feel comfortable doing what I'm doing. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I actually got a rare neuromuscular disease because it was triggered after I got a bad case of COVID. I'm in remission from that condition now, thank goodness, but it caused me to lose my eyesight. It caused me to lose my speech. It caused me to have my muscles droop on my face. My vocal cords stopped working. It was really, really, really horrifying. And I had to show up and do public speaking. I had to show up and do campaigns. I had to show up and do workshops. And I showed up and I just said, hey guys, I'm not well. And that's one of the reasons why we are all here, because we are all kind of going through something. And it is hard for me to be with you while I am so visibly going through something big right now. But we're going to get through this together. So just know that this is what's real. And I think that has been really helpful for me, because in the past, I don't want to talk about it. You know, I want to pretend like it's not happening. I want to push past it. I want to be super tough and strong and I'm fine and nothing's going on. But there are times in our lives where it brings us to our knees and we don't have a choice, right? Or we do have a choice, but I have found that the choice of being vulnerable is the best one for me.
I love it. That was a great question, Noah. Nitika, you are fantastic. You are doing so much for the community. I think being so honest and humble and vulnerable and sharing what you're going through. Obviously, there's others who are going through their own battles, and to have that sense of community and being able to connect, and just like you mentioned, being there for someone and just saying, like, what can I do to support you with what you're going through is absolutely fantastic. You know, you have to show up, you have to be disciplined, and you do have to love yourself and know your worth, because you bring a lot to the table and you can go wherever you want to go in life. Obviously, you can hear from our guest, like, there are some major struggles, health struggles that Nitika had to go through to get to where she is now. You just got to put in the work. So, Nitika, I just want to thank you again for being with us tonight. I want to wish you continued success. I do want to wish you some good health. And thank you for joining us on Breaking the Biz and just being an inspiration and a beacon of positivity, and showing that you got to put in the work if you want to go where you want to go. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for being here. Have a blessed night.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you've found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.